Hi, everybody. It's Jules Shore from IPNB Psychotherapy of Austin, and I'm here today with Kelly Edwards, one of our therapists. He's in our training program. He's an LMFT-Associate and an LPC-Intern, and LMFT means Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist Associate and Licensed Professional Counselor Intern. And all that means is he's already got a ton of hours in the chair and he's still working on completion of all of the 3,000 hours he needs to finish his full license. And he has a ton of training with couples and he's here to talk with us. I'm so excited, Kelly, that you're here because you're here to talk with us about couples and specifically about communication.
Yeah, thank you, Jules. Lots of times when I'm seeing a new couple, they come in and say, we really need help communicating. We have problems communicating. We need tools for better communication. And it's called the relationship feedback wheel. And it was developed by Terry Real. And it's one of my favorite tools to offer to couples for better communication.
So if people stick with us through this video, they're going to see the whole tool?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It's for 4 steps and it's pretty easy to implement.
And I'm with you. I think when I have a new couple come in, the very first thing I'm going to hear probably is we have major communication issues. And one of the things I've noticed through the years of doing this is that one of the big deals with communication issues is that we have 2 speakers at one point and nobody's listening. And something I love about the tool, the feedback wheel from Terry's work that you're going to share today, is it really has that very first step before you get to the 4 steps of how to talk to each other. It has that space where we're actually going to choose who's talking and who's listening. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you talk to your couple about it?
Well, before even getting into the feedback wheel, I like to say that there's 2 things to keep in mind before doing that. The first thing to keep in mind is ask your partner if now is a good time. Can we talk about something right now? Can we talk about something that bothered me? It could be that your partner is not resourced, is exhausted from work, or is really stressed from something that happened in the day, and it might not be a good time. If that's the case, it might be better to say, hey, not now, but maybe tomorrow morning when we have some free time.
You know,
I'd love to
Can
talk
I
to you
highlight something you did amazing there? Is if I'm in the listener space, that I say, hey, now's not a good time for me actually, but here's when would be a good time for me. So
yeah, exactly.
No is great. Limits are fabulous. And if we say no, we probably say no and so when we can.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I think a lot of times we forget. We either say yes, even though it's really not a good time. Or we say no and just leave it at that.
And then our partner feels unheard or dismissed.
Dropped.
And we don't want that either.
And we don't want that either. Yeah, exactly. Good. So the very first step then is to think about, is now a good time for me to talk to you about something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And then the second thing to keep in mind before even starting the feedback wheel is the motivation behind it, right? To remember that I like this term that Terry uses, that to be grounded in love, right? I'm doing this out of motivation to help my partner and to help my relationship. I'm not doing this out of anger, out of retaliation. That's not going to lead to positive communication. That's going to start a fight.
Right. Even if I am in the hurt partner position. So even if I'm in the space where my feelings got hurt, I would start from remembering love. I would start from being grounded in love and having the intention of repairing whatever happened. Okay. So the first thing is we asked if this is a good time to be heard.
Yes.
And the second thing we do is we stay grounded in love.
Yeah. Remember the motivation. Yes.
Okay. 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 I don't get to hear myself talking yet. What do I get to say?
Yeah. So now we actually start the feedback wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens next?
So the first step of the feedback wheel is a very objective part of it, right? Is what I heard or what I observed. And to explain this a little bit better, I like to think of it almost like, imagine there was a video recording of the incident, right? Whatever it might have been. I'm not adding extra opinions. I'm not adding descriptions that may or may not fit. It's what was observed.
So when I saw you ignoring me is not an observation, because a video camera can't catch that intention.
Yeah.
But if I saw you not look up, that is an observation. Am I getting it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then we move into the second step, right? The second step is the story I made up in my head. And so an example I was going to use is like, let's say I'm going to use an example from my own marriage. Do you think that's okay?
I think that's so great, because I know I see all these couples and we're in this space and we're trying to help you out, and we live it too. And we mess it up and we get it right. And I love using examples from my own marriage in my work. And you do that too. When you work with couples, you might pull in an example from your own marriage. Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So an example would be, there was one time that I was really excited about something that happened in my day, and I came over to tell my wife April about it, and I said, "Hey, I'm so excited. I wanted to share this from you." And she was listening and she was also looking at her phone. Right. So that's an observable action, what I just described, right?
Totally.
And then the story I made up in my head was that she wasn't interested in hearing what I had to say. That she couldn't be bothered by what I was excited to share with her.
Gotcha. So if you were doing the feedback wheel, then you'd say something like, what happened is I went in and wanted to tell you about something that was exciting, but you didn't look up from your phone. And then you say the story you made up about it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the language is so important. I'm intentionally using that language. The story I made up in my head, it's intentionally externalizing it a bit. It is adding my own bias, my own experience into it. And it is not necessarily assigning blame to my partner.
That's right. Because the feeling that came up next is like a combination. Yeah, it was prompted by this interaction, and April would be part of that. But a lot of the feeling actually came too from the story you made up in your head about it.
Yes.
So if you were going to do it clean, step 1, step 2, what would it sound like?
If I was going to do it clean,
really well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I after checking in, after being grounded, I would say I was very excited to tell you about something that happened in my day. And I noticed that you didn't look up from your phone. The story I made up about that, the story I made up in my head, was that you weren't interested in what I was excited about.
And here I'm going to jump in and be a terrible, this is the one where I mess up my listening role, guys. So I'm going to be like, no, that's not what I meant. Right. But if I do that early, then the feelings that are actually happening for you don't get heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So for those of us who take on the listening role, and by the way, let's say I was pretending to be April for a minute. If Kelly comes in and he says, hey, is now a good time to talk to you about something that hurt my feelings? One thing I have to do inside is check in and say, can I be grounded in love? Can I show up for my partner and really be taking on listening to whatever this full experience is for him? And so I'm going to say yes to that internally, really checking in with myself, and then give that verbal, yes, now's a great time, hon. Go ahead. And then I'm going to try really, really hard until he gets all the way through the 4 steps, not to interrupt him, which is hard for me because I'm really good at interrupting. My brain moves fast. I like to talk. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're arguing who's right and who's wrong, and we're not listening to the original.
Because I just became the speaker.
Yes.
I hear you. Okay, good. Okay, so you're doing fabulous. You're being a really good partner in this moment. You're using your feedback wheel. What's the 3rd step?
The 3rd step is how I felt.
Naming the feelings.
Yeah, naming the feelings. So using the same example, how I felt. I felt dismissed. I felt unimportant. I felt upset, sad.
Sad, hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so do we leave it there? No, there's 4 steps?
There's 4 steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 4th one is a step for future, right? So a request for the future. So in the future, I would like it if you put down your phone for a few minutes to hear my story that I'm excited to share with you.
Yeah, and it really is a request. That piece of it feels so important to me to really name and hit home for people, that when I make that request at the end, that it's really okay if my partner says, no, I can't do that.
Yes.
It's also okay for the partner to begin a little bit of negotiation, right? So it could be, let's say, actually, I'm in April's shoes and I was actually with a client in that moment on the phone. I was actually texting back and forth with a client, and I wasn't on Facebook, and I was actually doing something. So let's say Kelly makes that request of me, and it feels a little bit like, well, what if something's important happening for me? I might make a yes and. So yes, I'm going to do that. And how you could help me help you is, so it might sound like, I get that, and I'm totally happy to put down the phone. And it would help me if you want to tell me something that's really important, if you ask me if it was a good time to put down my phone first. Could you do that? So now we're back and forth into this negotiation. So just because a partner executed that wheel lovely and the request was really open does not mean we have to say yes. I want to give everybody permission now to say yes and, or no, but here's a different thing we could do that would also meet it, or that one wouldn't work for me, but here's an idea that could work. Right now we're 2 partners working together to solve a problem instead of knocking heads. Yeah.
So the speaker, the person giving the feedback, is not attached to the outcome. My goal as a speaker is not to change my partner's mind or to change this behavior. It's to offer that feedback, and then they're going to do with it whatever they decide. They're going to take it in, they're going to think about it, they're going to negotiate with me about what it might look in the future. But my goal is not to change their mind or to change their behavior. I'm unattached to the outcome.
Yeah, I want to highlight 2 things that you just said, because they feel so important to people who may be watching this. One is that when we're doing this, it's coming from being grounded in love. And two is that we're actually detached from the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think if we can hold on to those, then we can follow these steps in ways that feel really easy. Our tone's probably going to be better. We'll probably be able to hear each other well if we can stay in those spaces. Which, you know, you're married too. I don't always do it great, but it's the goal. It's an aspiration that's worth going for. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when your couples do use it, does it help?
I think it does. I think I think the point you made, Jules, about having two speakers, and it's almost like a power struggle of I'm thinking about my next argument, I'm thinking about my next point, and I'm not listening to my partner. I think that generally escalates into more conflict rather than anyone being heard. So I think one of the things I like about this is it keeps the couples from spiraling into this. Sometimes the language you hear is you always or you never, right? You always raise your voice when you talk to me. You never look up from your phone, and those lots of times those are indicators that we're not in a place where we can actually receive feedback.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So to highlight those 4 steps, well, it feels like 6 steps, just because there's 2 before we talk. So
Yeah.
One is to contract for time. Something hurt my feelings, is now a good time to share with you. Yeah. Or something made me angry. This doesn't have to always be hurt feelings. We could be talking about something that made us angry. I'm a big proponent of separating feeling from behavior. There's nothing wrong with any feeling on the planet. You can have all the feelings in the world. Anger, the feeling of anger is different than shouting, right? So I want to talk to you about something that made me mad, or I want to talk to you about something that hurt me, or I felt hurt. I want to talk to you about a moment where I felt hurt between us. Is now a good time. So 1 is contracting for time, and 2 is grounding in love. Remember why I'm actually doing this.
Just the motivation. What I am doing this in service of my partner, in service of my relationship. I'm wanting to improve both of those things by offering feedback.
Yeah. And then I would go observation, story,
yes,
feeling, request.
And request, yes.
Did I get it right?
You did. Okay,
great. Yeah. And in the listener role, we're trying to be there in service of the partner.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to turn into this, okay, well, I have feedback for you too. I'll listen to you, and then next comes my feedback. Let's just treat this as one incident.
I tell many couples that all the time. Even if you also have feedback about that same thing, I actually recommend, especially when you're first starting this, to really separate those out, actually even by a whole day. That way, whoever's in the speaker role really feels heard and held. And you can also have a turn. It'll just come at a different moment. That way it doesn't feel like a tit for tat sort of thing, or like we always have to say, well, if you have a thing, then I always have to have a thing too. Yeah.
Which is part of the communication issues they often come in with. Right?
Oh, I love it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could come today and talk to people about it. And I hope people find it useful, and I hope you guys have a really lovely day and stay safe out there in all this time. Yeah. Any last words?
Any last words? Yeah, I would recommend trying it at home, or maybe even practicing it while you're not, where there
Oh,
is an issue that's far in the past, or an issue that is not that activating. Just practice the roles and
mm-hmm,
using the 4 steps, or the 6 steps,
mm-hmm.
like you said, Jules.
Yeah.
And so just practice it a few times
Oh
before
my
you
God.
actually have to practice it with something that actually activated you, upset you, made you
Mm-hmm.
angry.
I love that advice. You know what you could do is you could even watch this video with your partner. And
Mm-hmm.
even before you practice it, you guys could just have a discussion about how you feel about this tool. Is this a tool that you both want to try? Then we could start it with something small or something that's old. Yeah, I love it. How fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm glad I could share that.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.